Italian bookkeeping, said the gentleman of the grey whiskers ironically. You may keep your books as you like, but if they spoil everything for you, there won't be any profit. Why do they spoil things? A poor thrashing machine, or your Russian presser, they will break, but my steam press they don't break. A wretched Russian nag they'll ruin, but keep good dray horses they won't ruin them. And so it is all round. We must raise our farming to a higher level. Oh, if one only had the means to do it, Nikolai Ivanovich. It's all very well for you, but for me, with a son to keep at the university, lads to be educated at the high school, how am I going to buy these dray horses? Well, that's what the land banks are for. To get what's left me sold by auction? No, thank you. I don't agree that it's necessary or possible to raise the level of agriculture still higher, said Levin. I devote myself to it, and I have means, but I can do nothing. As to the banks, I don't know to whom they're any good. For my part, anyway, whatever I've spent money on in the way of husbandry, it has been a loss, stock a loss, machinery a loss. That's true enough, the gentleman with the grey whiskers chimed in, positively laughing with satisfaction. And I'm not the only one, pursued Levin. I mix with all the neighboring landowners, who are cultivating their land on a rational system. They all, with rare exceptions, are doing so at a loss. Come, tell us, how does your land do? Does it pay? Said Levin, and at once in Saviashki's eyes he detected that fleeting expression of alarm which he had noticed whenever he had tried to penetrate beyond the outer chambers of Saviashki's mind. Moreover, this question on Levin's part was not quite in good faith. Madame Sviashkaya had just told him at tea that they had that summer invited a German expert in bookkeeping from Moscow, who for a consideration of 500 rubles had investigated the management of their property, and found that it was costing them a loss of 3,000 odd rubles. She did not remember the precise sum, but it appeared that the German had worked it out to the fraction of a farthing. The grey-whiskered landowner smiled at the mention of the profits of Saviashki's family, obviously aware how much gain his neighbor and marshal was likely to be making. Possibly it does not pay, answered Sviashki. That merely proves either that I'm a bad manager, or that I've sunk my capital for the increase of my rents. Oh, rent! Levin cried with horror. Rent there may be in Europe, where land has been improved by the labor put into it, but with us all the land is deteriorating from the labor put into it. In other words, they're working it out, so there's no question of rent. How no rent? It's a law. Then we're outside the law. Rent explains nothing for us, but simply muddles us. No, tell me how there can be a theory of rent? Will you have some junket? Masha, pass us some junket or raspberries. He turned to his wife. Extraordinarily late the raspberries are lasting this year. And in the happiest frame of mind Sviashki got up and walked off, apparently supposing the conversation to have ended at the very point when to Levin it seemed that it was only just beginning. Having lost his antagonist, Levin continued the conversation with the grey-whiskered landowner, trying to prove to him that all the difficulty arises from the fact that we don't find out the peculiarities and habits of our laborer. But the landowner, like all men who think independently and in isolation, was slow in taking in any other person's idea, and particularly partial to his own. He stuck to it that the Russian peasant is a swine and likes swinishness, and that to get him out of his swinishness one must have authority, and there is none. One must have the stick, and we have become so liberal that we have all of a sudden replaced the stick that served us for 1,000 years by lawyers and model prisons, where the worthless, stinking peasant is fed on good soup and has a fixed allowance of cubic feet of air. What makes you think, said Levin, trying to get back to the question, that it's impossible to find some relation to the laborer in which the labor would become productive? That never could be so with the Russian peasantry. We've no power over them, answered the landowner. How can new conditions be found? Said Sviashki. Having eaten some junket and lighted a cigarette, he came back to the discussion. All possible relations to the labor force have been defined and studied, he said. The relic of barbarism, the primitive commune with each guarantee for all, will disappear of itself. Serfdom has been abolished, there remains nothing but free labor, and its forms are fixed and ready-made, and must be adopted. permanent hands, day laborers, rammers. You can't get out of those forms. But Europe is dissatisfied with these forms. Dissatisfied, and seeking new ones. And will find them, in all probability. That's just what I was meaning, answered Levin. Why shouldn't we seek them for ourselves? Because it would be just like inventing afresh the means for constructing railways. They are ready, invented. But if they don't do for us, if they're stupid? Said Levin. And again he detected the expression of alarm in the eyes of Sviashky. Oh, yes, we'll bury the world under our caps. We've found the secret Europe was seeking for. I've heard all that, but, excuse me, do you know all that's been done in Europe on the question of the organization of labor? No, very little. That question is now absorbing the best minds in Europe. The Schultz-Delitzsch movement. And then all this enormous literature of the labor question, the most liberal Lassalle Mouvement Mulhausen experiment? That's a fact by now, as you're probably aware. I have some idea of it, but very vague. No, you only say that. No doubt you know all about it as well as I do. I'm not a professor of sociology, of course, but it interested me, and really, if it interests you, you ought to study it. But what conclusion have they come to? Excuse me. The two neighbors had risen, and Sviashky, once more checking Levin in his inconvenient habit of peeping into what was beyond the outer chambers of his mind, went to see his guests out. Chapter 28. Levin was insufferably bored that evening with the ladies. He was stirred as he had never been before by the idea that the dissatisfaction he was feeling with his system of managing his land was not an exceptional case, but the general condition of things in Russia, that the organization of some relation of the laborers to the soil in which they would work, as with the peasant he had met halfway to the Sviashkys, was not a dream, but a problem which must be solved. And it seemed to him that the problem could be solved, and that he ought to try and solve it.